friends. It's me, Duncan, and wow, what an episode we have for you today. My friend William Montgomery is with us today, and uh, as you know, parade season is in full effect, and he had a lot of things to say about one of the big parades he recently attended. But before I get into that, I want to say hello to my friends down under. It's been too long, loves, and I'm headed your way. I have an Australia tour coming up, and I would love to see all of you, everyone in Australia. I'd love to meet individually every person living in Australia. All I need is for you to come to any of these shows. I'm going to be at the Sky City Theatre in Auckland, the Tivoli in Brisbane, the Factory Theatre in Sydney, the Thornbury Theatre in Melbourne, and the Astor Theatre Perth. You can find ticket links at duncantrussell.com. Australia, I'm coming home. Also, if you're one of our dear listeners, don't forget we have a YouTube. If you want to see these epic episodes live, you can find those at Duncan Trussell on YouTube. And now, everybody, William Montgomery. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. We're going to have to start the podcast over. William Montgomery is here, everybody. Can they see both of us at the same time? How does that even work? Oh, there you go. William Montgomery's here. William, let me just start over because we have to start over the podcast. So thus ends the live DTFH with me just rambling. And now we will begin the second phase of the DTFH. This is phase Beta Crow. And let me just introduce it real quick. Everybody, cut his fucking mic.
All right.
Cut his mic.
It's cut.
Have you never been on a show? Do you understand that I have to introduce the new show? Do you you're over there with your wheezy laugh. I'm trying to go into beta. Just let me do this.
Have you ever taken water out of the sink by any chance? Have either
Turn his mic on so we can hear what he has to say.
Go ahead.
Have either one of you ever tasted the water out of the sink
Delicious.
in the bathroom?
It's fucking great.
Is it safe to drink?
If you heat it up first.
Well, I just drank some, and I was immediately thinking, this smells weird, this tastes weird. Are you kidding, or it's okay?
You know what? We should get William some water.
Okay.
Probably. Do you mind? And then we'll just...
And you were kidding, right?
No, you have to warm it up first.
We're going to get you water.
Really?
Yeah.
Just heat it up. You heat your fucking
Well,
water.
I didn't heat it up. I just drank some.
What are you, a dog?
I had surgery today, Duncan, literally.
Oh, I'm sorry, man, but dude, I heat up.
And you're kidding, right?
No, you got it. It's a boil order, all because of the parades. It's a nationwide boil order.
My God, y'all are messing with me. Smell my hand. You want to? Smells moldy.
Smells good.
Smells moldy.
No, it doesn't.
I just drank that water. I cupped it out of my hand.
I just feel like I smelled a rose. It smells
thank you.
good, man. Oh my
God. Thank you.
You know, I have heard that people who are like very advanced magically or spiritually smell like roses.
That would make sense.
And you smell like a rose.
That would make sense. I've been working on my magic stuff ever since I started doing those shows with you and you were telling me about all the magic. I started doing some of the magic stuff recently. But
isn't it fun?
Oh, it's so much fun. Yeah, I just watched a scary movie where they're using a bunch of magic.
We can't see you because Josh went to get William water. Thank you, Josh. Is that boiled?
I boiled it first. Pre-boiled.
So now I think y'all are kidding. Now I think it's safe. Josh, it's safe that I drink the water out of there, right?
You should be good.
Well, what is theoretically even a problem?
Can
like
you
parasites?
cut his mic?
All right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the DTFH. We are here with one of my favorite comedians of all time, and we're doing this live. This is the first time that I can recall that we've ever had a guest on a live feed, so it's pretty exciting. As many of you out there listening or watching on YouTube know, we are in parade season is in full effect. And you know me, it's all I've been talking about for the last month. It's like, when is it going to start? When does parade season start? Now it has happened. You guys know I got a bunch of kids. I'm very busy. I've been working on getting the napping room in my backyard underneath the house, which is a lot. We've got a tunnel napping room under the house. It's really cool. It's so fun. so I haven't had time to make it out to any of these parades, but I'm so excited because William Montgomery decided to take a break. He's full bore into the parade thing and dropped by the studio. I think he was just at one of these parades, and we're here to talk about it. Now we have someone who's actually been at the parades in person. Everybody, it's William Montgomery.
So nice to be here.
Great to see you.
And if you want to adjust the camera, if everybody wants to see, I actually, look at this. I got hit with a beanbag, part of a beanbag. See, I got part of a shiner coming in.
Damn.
And then also, yeah, you want to zoom in right there? I was actually at the parade last night having a wonderful time. I just want to say all the vendors they have set up. There are some really great corn dog vendors
No
at
way.
these freaking things. They're wonderful.
Oh
Oh my
my
gosh,
God.
I was eating so much food last night, having so much fun. People start running for some reason. I don't understand what's going
Well,
on.
it's the running gas. Was there the running smoke?
Yeah, there was
That's
some
the
sort of
tr-
smoke.
So
and
you know how they have the starter gun and the smoke comes out of it at races? Dude, you know what? This is the thing. Your boots on the ground. I've been looking at the new parade rules, but apparently one of the games they're playing is when you see the running smoke, you run.
yes,
and
and
so,
I did not.
Was there smoke? Was there like running smoke? Did you see smoke while people were running?
Yes,
Yeah, it's
they
running
were.
smoke.
Okay, because yeah, I see smoke, and then I noticed people are running, so I couldn't put two and two together at the time, but
Yeah.
I didn't really have a lot of time to even try and put two and two together because I got hit by something in the face. I thought it was a bee or something, and then I noticed there is somebody in some sort of
Desert wear.
yeah, like desert wear or something. It really was like desert wear with some sort of looked like a shotgun, and I guess he was shooting.
Dude, the cosplay at this year's parades is just off the charts. Like they definitely are putting a lot of money into the cosplay. That's crazy because like, did you pick up the beanbag?
Yes, was able to pick up the
Where you
beanbag.
got it? I want to see it.
Oh my gosh, it's out in the car.
Oh my
It's out
God,
in the car. I
dude!
should have
wish you
brought it.
brought it. Those things are so cool. You can trade those for different things, and like I think you can use them as like.
Hold on, is that me? Hold on, I almost. God, I was just having so much fun. Look, I was in a. No, that was a lady.
I don't think
was
is that
wearing
Austin?
No,
I don't
this
think
is
that's
not
Austin. But yeah, that's.
But I was just in California as well. I've been going to all these parades. I've been
Oh,
traveling.
you're on fucking tour.
Oh yes, I'm going to Minneapolis in 2 days. I'm really excited. I think there's a good parade about to happen up north.
Oh my God, that's gonna be fun. I'm kind of surprised you weren't hitting the Portland parades. They're always good at parades. Seattle parades.
I've been sick, Duncan. I got to get on a statin. I got my
Yeah.
results back from
Yeah.
the doctor. I have built up a plaque in my carotid artery, so I'm having to. I couldn't go to Portland. I was pumped about the parade in Portland or whatever, but yeah, I got the bad news and just had to do a couple puzzles this
Do
weekend.
you think that has something to do with the corn dog world record thing you did? Like, how many corn dogs did you
Oh
eat?
yeah, 15 and 10 minutes, but we're talking 2 foot long hot dogs.
Jesus
So
Christ!
some people would say 30-foot longs.
How do you even get those down? Like,
A lot of water. A lot of water. I have a
Ah.
system. Yeah, I'll cut it up into little pieces before the whistle starts or whatever, and then once it goes, I can put it in my mouth, pretty much swallow it.
You know, I used to really be into like hot dog eating contests.
Yeah.
I mean, attending, not doing, because like I'm not one of those, and I'm not obviously you're a world record breaker, but you know, I just think like some people have such hubris that they
Oh,
would
yeah.
even think they could do professional hot dog eating, and it's just so lame.
It's
So I
offensive.
go to enjoy. I'm not one of
Yeah.
these people who's like, I want to be a hot dog eater.
Well, I appreciate you because
Yeah,
there's way
man.
too many people just clogging up the system. Just
Dude.
as my arteries are getting clogged, people clog up the system.
Exactly. Full respect for you, no cap.
Thank you, thank you.
And I've always enjoyed a good hot dog eating contest. It's really amazing the athleticism, the training, and all that. You know, Dogs of Glory is my favorite documentary, the Kim Burns thing. It's like so incredible. But the corn dog eaters, this is like the next level because whereas with the most hot dog eating contests, worst case scenario, you puke.
Yes.
That's just part of the game. But like in Dogs of Glory, you know, they really like get into like not just like that as a tradition of the hot dog eating contest, but the ayahuasca purges. And apparently, like a lot of the hot dog eaters say that their negative energy comes out when they vomit. So there's an actual psychic purging happen. And then, of course, and Ken Burns really covered this well. I didn't believe it, but after I kind of believe it, the demonic entities that can get into the crowd from the hot dog puke because they're vomiting out like curses and like all kinds of shit that like warlocks and witches put on them and stuff, which is another thing I didn't know, which I'm assuming is the same with corn dogs, is like for whatever reason, warlocks, witches, wizards, and necromancers.
They love going to these things.
But some of them curse because they put bets on whoever, and then they curse whoever. And so the puking thing is to get rid of the curses that are constantly being hurled at them from the witches, warlocks, blah, blah, in the crowd. So corn dog eating, though, what's fascinating to me about that.
And that's what people need to know, Duncan. It's like all these idiots out there think, oh my God, okay, I get hungry sometimes. I can eat a couple hot dogs and around my family or whatever. But again, it's a whole different thing, Duncan. People aren't even thinking about these people out in the crowd, about these kind of devilly at times people, about these magical kind of people in the crowd. I mean, you're having to deal with that.
Okay, maybe you could do this. Josh, will you pull up a hot dog eating contest, please? We'll get to the parade stuff, guys, but I think this is pretty interesting. So, yeah, this is, let's see if we can get a crowd shot. Okay, is that okay, yeah, okay, pause it right there. So, after watching the Burns documentary, I thought it was interesting because you would think like a warlock or a necromancer would wear classic like purple robes, staff with a demon skull on it. But I look out at that and I just see a bunch of people coming to enjoy a hot dog eating con.
Well, I could tell you right now, Duncan, some of those necromancers, they're wearing the hot dog hats. That's how you can tell a lot of these people. And then some people with the regular ball caps, that's probably a witch.
So what percentage of people there are like me, just coming to watch just like classic American hot dog eating contests? And how many of those are like
probably 5%?
Or witches or necromancers?
No, 5% are folks like you.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's a crazy deal.
And this explains why if like you don't bring your kid to a hot dog eating contest because like that's the number one place kids disappear.
Yes.
Because
they snatch the children for the ritual. Or they sprinkle the hair of some dead relative in their popcorn or something. They eat the hair. You're waking up the next day with some dead relative standing over you. It's actually your child who has gotten possessed by. Yeah, I mean, it's like this. It's like this waterfall. It's like this. It's horrible.
I mean, people are like, baseball is the greatest sport because there's so much happening, like just under the surface.
American pastime.
Dude, but you know what? I think hot dog eating is American pastime.
Oh, yes.
Everything else is bullshit.
Way more exciting when you start putting mustard on these things. It turns it up a notch.
That is wild. The mustard, spicy mustard, and that is where we jump into corn dog eating contest, and that's where I would say you leave the little boys behind, and now you're in the grown-up room. Hot dog eating contest is the romper playroom where your parents send you down when they're doing the key thing, and then remember that when your parents used to like trade keys and shit. And
Yeah.
Bang, like watching them bang like
Yeah, sex
dad's
that.
friends and stuff. Okay. No, I don't want to get derailed by that, but
And is it okay that I drink? Y'all are scaring me because it smelled so bad, but I had to do it. It's okay that I drank that water, right?
nationwide boil order or whatever because of the parade.
Okay. You won't die. So that's good. Okay.
Don't freak him out. You'll be fucking fine, man. You eat how many corn dogs do you eat? I'm sure you could have a little fucking
Little corn dog.
mildly contaminated water.
Yeah, I was thinking whenever I walk into a place, I think, okay, I could set up maybe a fryer over here or something over there. I swear to God, it's like it's a weird deal. Now, every freaking house I go into, apartment I go into, I'm thinking, okay, I could set this up right in this order. I could set this up on this table. I could start making corn dogs in here.
It's in your DNA. Like it's always gonna be with you.
Yeah, from my mom's side of the family. A lot of those people
Corn dog eaters.
down in Mississippi, eating
corn dogs.
Mississippi corn dog on a hot summer day. Woo! Give me a kiss. My sorrows go away. Lily, now tell me this.
Yeah.
Are you afraid? Because as opposed to hot dog eating contests, corn dog eating contests, every year, what is it, 20% of contestants choke to death?
Yes.
Are you afraid going into it? It's the free climbing of hot dog eating. It seems so dangerous.
I'm afraid, Duncan, but if I lived my life being controlled by fear, I wouldn't leave my bed.
Right.
I'm a very fearful person,
Right.
and that's why you got to practice. I mean, that's why you got to practice when you're cutting it up into the correct sizes.
Yeah.
You practice how to swallow. You take the breading off first. First, you master hot dogs. Then there's this thing that I bought on Amazon. You stick it in your mouth, and then you press a button, and it expands in your throat, so it makes your throat.
A widener.
Yes, the widener. It makes
Yeah.
you gag. It's a really horrible kind of deal.
I can't imagine. It looks so painful.
Oh, it's nasty.
Now, do you agree? And I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but don't you think that they should make it illegal to the corn dog eaters who can get surgery where they can unhinge their jaw? Isn't that kind of like, to me, that seems like doping in sport.
Yeah, it's totally messed up. But what I say is, well, good luck getting the surgery on your gut, because that's the one on your actual stomach. Some of the people are getting surgery on your stomach. Instead of making it real small like the fat people do, they actually get another stomach.
So they're doing like the cow thing where cows have that, like, I don't know how many
Yes.
stomachs they have, but they have like one,
They have a couple stomachs. You got to start eating rocks to fill up the one stomach with rocks.
which is crazy to think that they're like taking it so far as to replace their teeth with like steel so they can grind up the rocks.
Yeah, it's like a turkey. It's
So-
kind of like a human turkey.
It feels like corn dog eating contests, hot dog eating contests, it just kind of takes over your life.
Yeah, well, it's a cruel mistress, as they say. It's a cruel mistress, because it really can start taking over. You can, shit, I was 25 when I wanted to start my first family, but it just didn't work out. And now there's nights where I can't go to sleep, Duncan, and it's like, oh shit, I made a horrible decision. But you live and you learn and you try to figure it out. You eat more hot dogs, and then you eat more corn dogs, and then you start taking statins. And I talked to my mom earlier, and she's telling me statins are maybe dangerous to take. But it's also like, well, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know too much about like statins or like cardiovascular stuff, but if I was you, like I've heard like mashed potatoes, like
Without butter? Because I thought
Buttered
butter was
mashed
bad for you.
well, it is if you do it without the mashed potatoes, if you're eating raw sticks of butter.
So mixing it in with the mashed potatoes, that can maybe help me. Because I've
That's-
heard potatoes are super good.
Well, that they actually will prescribe buttered mashed potatoes to people for. They used to give people, God, what was it called? There were these pills you could take, but now they will just. It's crazy. My dad had them, like a little prescription bottle with buttered mashed potatoes in it. And if you start having a heart attack, you eat those things, you're good to go.
That's what they gave the guy. I think it was a Japanese guy. Do you mind looking up the picture? I think you would maybe look up. What do you get with an atomic bomb?
Wait,
What is that?
real quick, can you enlarge the pair of English? Real quick,
That's kind of similar to the thing I put in my throat. But you don't twist it. It's like that big you twist.
and that goes in your. That's a widener for your mouth. I guess it could work in your like anywhere. That seems like it could help me a lot because I have not been drinking enough water and I'm having very difficult bowel movements.
Really? Oh my gosh, Duncan, you know what saved me?
What?
Because I have two, Duncan. I will go. What about you? I will go a day without going up to.
I will sit on the toilet for a day.
Well, be careful. It doesn't make your legs go numb. I can
Yeah.
only sit on a toilet for so long.
Dude, my wife last week had to like pull me off the toilet because I couldn't get up.
Be careful.
I know. But it's just like, it kind of missed the boat. Like, so you get up and whatever, and suddenly you feel a bowel movement coming on, and then by the time you get to the bathroom, nothing's happening. So if you catch, it's like fishing.
Yeah, well, maybe I need to sit on the toilet longer because I'll go a day. But prune juice has been a real godsend for me.
I've heard that's
I
really
chug
good for
prune
you.
juice, and then it's scary because it's like your bowel movements are just kind of watery, kind of nightmares. And I don't think your bowel movements are generally supposed to be like that, right?
No, it's good.
Okay, yeah, well, that's what it is. Just a bunch of having to
I
clean
think,
up after.
No, this is kind of like the overregulation of our country from the woke mainstream media wants you to think that having geysers watery, I'm not going to say a curse word, bowel movement
Yeah.
is a sign that something's wrong because who makes the money? You go to the doctor and you're like, is there supposed to be this much blood in my blood? And the doctor's like, no,
Get on a statin.
get on a statin.
Well, according to my mom, every time a doctor does out a prescription for statins, the doctor's making money. So it's like a
Tons.
pushback.
Tons.
So-
They love it. They love it. Yeah, so no, it's totally normal, man. When it does happen, like when I've been on the toilet, it finally happens. Like sometimes, usually it's just like rock hard,
Yeah.
like rock hard. You can like we were on vacation in Waco, and
No, what did y'all do? Go see some museums and
we went to
stuff,
the
or-
Waco Gardens. We went to the Waco Art Museum. Saw 3 Picassos. Elton John was playing that night. We
Wonderful.
took a yacht ride down the beautiful, like massive Waco River. We got incredible massages at the Branch Davidian Spa.
I love that. I've heard it's really nice. What do they do? Thai massages there where they're rocking on your
Thai
back?
massages, and so it's like this is what I call making when life gives you lemons, make lemonades, because they took the compound that was burnt down and they
Yeah.
built this beautiful spa. And you can go down, and in the basement, they've got this incredible steam room,
Oh, I love
which
a good
is a kind
steamer.
of wink to the, like,
Yeah.
but
Whatever.
they've got like a Russian spa. It's super like hot. It's like,
Oh, I love
oh,
that.
dude, it's great. Waco, if you are in Texas and you're looking for a luxury vacation, my God,
Don't go to Dallas. Go to Waco.
don't go to fucking Dallas.
Yeah, don't go to
Nothing
Dallas.
in Dallas. Waco is just like I feel like I like reversed age by like 10 years. I left there with a spring in my step.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
And let me just say, the old lady got a little risky.
Woo! Do all the rooms really have mirrors on the ceiling?
Yeah.
Is that freaky?
Well, the freaky thing about it is it's like, you know, the Haunted Mansion where you could see the ghost in the.
The place to begin, I think, is obviously with the question, who is Hermes Trismegistus? What are we talking about here? I mean, it sounds so incredibly exotic to people. The Renaissance had the concept of what it called the Presci Theologi. And if my Latin and Greek irritates you, you have to understand you're dealing with a boy from a coal mining town in Colorado. So I do mangle these things. The Presci Theologi were Orpheus, Moses, and primarily Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus was the primary source, from the point of view of the Renaissance, of this whole mystery tradition. And you recall from last night's lecture that this is based on a misunderstanding the Renaissance believed that Hermes Trismegistus was older than Moses. We know now, thanks to Isaac and Marik Casaubon, two philologists of the early 17th century, that definitely the Hermetic corpus was composed between the 1st and 2nd centuries after Christ. The method of the Casaubons was to examine the philosophical language of the Corpus Hermeticum and show that there were words and phrases there that were post-Platonic and derivative from philosophers whose dates we have fully in hand. Now, if you go to an occult bookstore, you will find that to this day, this error persists. There are people who still want to claim that this stuff is older than dynastic Egypt. There are even books available. I was in Shambhala a week ago claiming to teach you how to change lead into gold. Well, from my point of view, this just evokes a small smile. The old errors persist. The puffers are still at it. But what Hermes Trismegistus is a character who appears in many guises in these Hermetic dialogues. The Hermetic hymns are usually couched in the form of dialogues between Hermes and his son Thoth. And Thoth takes the role of the uninitiated ingenue who is sitting at the feet of the master. And Thoth asks questions. What is the true nature of the world? What is the true nature of man? And Hermes answers. And the general form of these texts, with exceptions, because there are 20 of them, is an intellectual dialogue which builds to an ecstatic revelation. And then in the wake of the ecstatic revelation, there is a hymn of praise to Hermes Trismegistus. Trismegistus means thrice blessed and is sometimes called Hermes triplex to distinguish this Hermes from all the other Hermes of early, middle, and late Greek thinking. Hermes is, of course, the messenger god, the god of scribes. The reason this ibis-headed being holding a staff is embossed on the cover of each of these books is because this is how Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth Hermes, was imagined. He was associated with the scribe god of the Egyptian pantheon. The two distinguishing factors, at least that stand out for me, that I think you need to incorporate into your thinking about the Hermeticism, two very important concepts. The first is the divinity of human beings, an extraordinarily radical idea in the context of late Hellenistic thinking. We all operate under the spell of the concept of the fall of man, that man is an inferior being, errors were made in the Garden of Eden, and that we are far, far from the nature of divinity. All magic, and all magic in the West is derivative from this tradition, takes the position that man is a divine being. Men and women are divine beings. The Corpus Hermeticum actually refers to man as God's brother. And this is a double-edged perception. It gives tremendous dignity to the human enterprise, but it also raises the possibility of the error of pride and hubris. In the Renaissance, Marcello Ficino boiled this notion down to the aphorism, man is the measure of all things. And you may notice that this is the position really of science, that man is the measure of all things, that it is up to us. We can decide the course of the cosmos. All magic stems from this position. This is why the church was so concerned to stamp out magic, because it assigns man an importance that the church would rather reserve to deity. So that's the first great division between Christian thinking and Hermetic thinking, an entirely different conception of what human beings are. And when we get into the text, I'll read you some of these passages. Now, the second distinguishing factor, and notice that this position on man empowers tremendous freedom. Man is the measure of all things. The second distinguishing factor in Hermeticism is the belief that we can control fate, that we can escape from cosmic fate. The late Hellenistic mindset was, and what you get in the Gnostics is the belief that because of astrology, because of the stars, we are subject to control from these exterior forces. In most Gnostic thinking, the whole concern is to somehow evade what is called the hymarmony, cosmic fate. And in the Gnostic systems, the only way it can be done is by ascending through the shells of cosmic ordering forces, the archons, the planets, planetary demons, so forth and so on, and then beyond the hymarmony, which is actually thought of as a place, space that you burst through. You transcend fate. What the Hermetic thought is that these fates become personified as the decans, as the stellar demons, and then it is held that there is a magical system which is possible where you can call these archangels to your side and work with them and not be subject to the inevitable working of the cosmic machinery. And this burst like a revelation over the late Hellenistic world, because there was such philosophical and emotional and political exhaustion that this is a counterpoise to the message of the New Testament, which is a similar message, that you can be saved in the body, that you can escape the inevitable dissolution and degradation laid upon us by time. So these are the two distinguishing factors, the divinity of man and the possibility of using magic to evade the machinery of fate. So I want to read some of the Corpus Hermeticum to you to give you the flavor of it. But before I do, I want to say something about the history of these texts. You're all familiar, more or less, I'm sure, with Apuleius' The Golden Ass, which is a novel of initiation that is late Roman. Apuleius also put together what is called the Asclepius. And the Asclepius is true Hermetic literature that was not lost. It was the only one that was available throughout the Dark and Middle Ages. All the rest was lying untranslated in Syrian monasteries until Gemistus Pletho in 1490 brought these manuscripts to Florence, to the court of the de Medicis, and then the translation project began. Now, the only other Hermetic material that was accessible throughout the High Gothic period was a book of magic called Picatrix. And the Picatrix was probably written in the 1200s, although this elicits screams of dissent from the burning-eyed faction. But reason dictates that we consider Picatrix 12th century. So only the Asclepius and the Picatrix represented this strain of thought before the 1460s. And the importance of Hermetic thinking can be seen by the fact that Gemistus Pletho brought Plato to the Florentine Council, as well as Hermes Trismegistus. And when Marcello Ficino sat down to do this translation work, Cosimo de' Medici said, Plato can wait. I'm getting old. You do the Hermetic corpus first. That's much more important. We'll sort out this Plato business in a few years. And so it was done. And it was completed in 1493, and in 1494 Cosimo died. So he never saw the translations of Plato, but felt that the Corpus Hermeticum was more important. I mention this to show you the importance that was attached to this stuff. Here is one of the key passages on man's nature. This is from Book 1 of the Corpus Hermeticum. But mind, the father of all, he who is life and light, gave birth to man, a being like to himself. And he took delight in man as being his own offspring, for man was very goodly to look on, bearing the likeness of his father. With good reason, then, did God take delight in man, for it was God's own form that God took delight in. And God delivered over to man all things that had been made. This is the basis of the Ficenian statement, man is the measure of all things. And man took station in the Maker's sphere and observed the things made by his brother, who was set over the region of fire. And having observed the Maker's creation in the region of fire, he willed to make things for his own part also, and his Father gave permission, having in himself all the working of the administrators. This is a reference to the angel hierarchy. And and the administrators took delight in him, and each of them gave him a share of his own nature. So man is the brother of God and a creature at home with the angels. This idea is echoed in the Asclepius, which you'll recall was available throughout the Middle Ages. The range of man is yet wider than that of the demons, meaning the angels. This term is transposable in Hermetic thought. The individuals of the humankind are diverse and of many characters. They, like the demons, come from above, and entering into fellowship with other individuals, they make for themselves many and intimate connections with almost all other kinds. And then the famous passage, man is a marvel then, Asclepius. Honor and reverence to such a being. Man takes on him the attributes of a god, as though he were himself a god, and he is familiar with the demon kind, for he comes to know that he is sprung from the same source as they, and strong in the assurance of that in him which is divine. He scorns the merely human part of his own nature. How far more happily blended are the properties of man than those of other beings. He is linked to the gods, inasmuch as there is in him a divinity akin to theirs. He scorns that part of his own being which makes him a thing of earth, and all else with which he finds himself connected by heaven's ordering, he binds to himself by the tie of his affection. So this is an incredibly radical conception of what it means to be human. So radical that it is unwelcome even in the present context. Notice the modern feeling of this stuff. I mean, this is not biblical rhetoric. This is philosophical discourse as we know it and carry it out ourselves. This is a passage on the adept and initiation. Now this is, let me see who's speaking here. Thoth speaks to Paimandres. This is book 1. But tell me this too, said I. God said, let the man who has mind in him recognize himself. But have not all men mind? And then Paimandres replies, O man, said mind to me, speak not so. I, even mind, come to those men who are holy and good and pure and merciful, and my coming is a succor to them, and forthwith they recognize all things, and win the Father's grace by loving worship, and give thanks to him, praising and hymning him with hearts uplifted to him in filial affection. Again, the reference to being God's brother, in filial affection. And before they give up the body to the death which is proper to it, they loathe the bodily senses, knowing what manner of work the senses do. Now, this introduces the theme of asceticism, that like, like the Gnostics, there is, in much of the Hermetic literature, a kind of horror of the earth, a desire to ascend and to get away from it. Scott makes the distinction between what he calls pessimistic gnosis and optimistic gnosis. And within the 20 texts of the Corpus Hermeticum, you get vacillation on this point. In some cases, the Mandaean, the Sabaean tendency is there, and the world soul is invoked, and the whole of creation is seen as a living being involved in this soteriological process, this process of salvational mechanics through magic. In other texts, this Gnostic horror of matter is very strongly stressed. It's very clear that the Hellenistic mind was ambivalent on this point, even as we are ambivalent on this point. I mean, it's a real question. Are we here to be the caretakers of the earth, or are we strangers in the universe? And is our task to return to a forgotten and hidden home, no trace of which can be found in the saturnine world of matter? It's very hard to have it both ways. You're going to have to sort of take a position on that, and these people were forced into the same dilemma. There's no middle ground between those two positions. And so that dichotomy, that conundrum, haunted a lot of Hermetic thinking. Here is the Hermetic creation myth. This is book 3, paragraphs 1 through a few, and you will see the comparison, the similarities to the Christian creation myth, but with extraordinary differences. There was darkness in the deep, and water without form, and there was a subtle breath, intelligent, which permeated the things in chaos with divine power. Then, when all was yet undistinguished and unwrought, there was shed forth holy light, and the elements came into being. All things were divided one from another, and the lighter things were parted off on high, the fire being suspended aloft, so that it rose unto the air, and the heavier things sank down, and sand was deposited beneath the watery substance, and the dry land was separated out from the watery substance, and became solid, and the fiery substance was articulated with the gods therein. And heaven appeared with its 7 spheres, and the gods, visible in starry forms, with all their constellations. And heaven revolved and began to run its circling course, riding upon the divine air. And each god, by his several power, set forth that which he was bidden to put forth. And there came forth 4-footed beasts, and creeping things and fishes and winged birds and grass and every flowering herb, all having seed in them according to their diverse natures. For they generated within themselves the seed by which their races should be renewed. And then it goes on to describe the birth of man. Now, this kind of thinking is what alchemy seized upon in its ambitions. In a way, one way of thinking about what alchemy came to attempt is the thinking went like this. Since man is God's brother, the purpose of man is to intercede in time. And it was believed that ores, precious metals, and things like this grew in the earth. It was a thoroughgoing theory of evolution that reached right down into the organic realm. So it was thought that gold deposits in the earth would actually replenish themselves over time. And it's passages like this that give permission for that kind of thinking. In line with that, we're now in Book 4, and remember, the tone changes slightly from book to book. They were, after all, written over a 300-year period by various people. You must understand, then, that God is pre-existent and ever-existent, and that He alone made all things, and created by His will the things that are. And when the Creator had made the ordered universe, He willed to set in order the earth also. He willed to set in order the earth also. And so He sent down man, a mortal creature made in the image of an immortal being, to be an embellishment of the divine body. For it is man's function, here it comes, the purpose of man, according to Book 4, for it is man's function to contemplate the works of God, and for this purpose he was made, that he might view the universe with wondering awe and come to know its maker. Man has this advantage over all other living beings, that he possesses mind and speech. Now speech, my son, God imparted to all men, but mind He did not impart to all. Not that He grudged it to any, for the grudging temper does not start from heaven above, but comes from being here below, in the souls of those men who are devoid of mind. This introduces the concept of an elect, or a perfecti, a hierarchy of human accomplishment and understanding, and this is also basic to Gnosticism. It's not for everyone, they're saying. It's for the pure of heart. And what pure of heart means depends on the school you're looking at. For some, it was mathematical accomplishment. For others, it was contact with the logos. For others, it was an ability to resist the temptations of the senses. But there was always this sense of the higher and lower possibility within the human experience. Everybody with me so far? This is at the opening of Book 12, and this is a book with a heavy Mandaean sensitivity, this sensitivity to life. Now this whole cosmos, and notice how this transcends even the Buddhist point of view, because in Buddhism plants have no souls. It's a tremendous failure in the Buddhist conception as far as I'm concerned. Okay, this is book 12. Now this whole cosmos, which is a great God and an image of Him who is greater and is united with Him and maintains its order in accordance with that will, is one mass of life. And there is not anything in the cosmos, nor has been through all time from the first foundation of the universe, neither in the whole nor among the several things contained in it, that is not alive. There is not, and has never been, and never will be in the cosmos anything that it is dead. For it was the Father's will that the cosmos, as long as it exists, should be a living being, and therefore it must needs be a God also. How then, my son, could there be dead things in that which is God, in that which is an image of the Father, in that which is one mass of life? Deafness is corruption, and corruption is destruction. How then can any part of that which is incorruptible be corrupted, or any part of that which is a God be destroyed? And there are other passages. This is a good one. This is Book 18. For as the sun nurtures all vegetation, also gathers the first fruits of the produce with his rays, as it were with mighty hands, plucking the sweetest odors of the plants, even so we too, having received into our souls, which are plants of heavenly origin, the efflux of God's wisdom, must in return use his service for all that springs up in us. Now this conception that the human soul is a plant is a unique idea. I don't know of another tradition. Those of you who were with us in Ojai, we heard Johannes Wilbur talk about how among the Amazon Indians, the Warao, the men actually marry trees. They actually take trees as their wives, a tree, and it is a man's job throughout his life to take care of this tree with the same tenderness and attention that he lavishes on a living wife. This is a more radical conception than that. This is the conception that the most important part of us is a plant. It reminds me of the joke that I occasionally make in these groups, the notion that animals are something invented by plants to carry them from place to place. Well, according to this, that's right on. So the sensitivity to the vegetative nature of the world is so great that it raises a plant to be the pith essence, the soul of man, the brother of God. So you see, the valuation of the vegetative universe here is of an extremely radical type. Yes, Camille.
I was just going to ask if that upper echelon section of humanity that was given the mind, was that predetermined at birth, or could someone develop a mind?
No, it is not predetermined. It is something that is acquired through cultivation of a relationship to, in the Hermetic language, nous, the higher mind, and in the Gnostic language, logos, the informing spirit. But yes, no, the whole thrust, yes, and the nothing is predetermined in the Hermetic system, because through magic we can overcome the energies of cosmic fate. This is the great good news of Hermeticism, that we are not subject to fate. We should probably talk a little about this logos concept. This is something which seems very alien to modern people unless they are psychedelically sophisticated. The logos was the sine qua non of Hellenistic religion. And what it was an informing voice that spoke in your head or your heart, wherever you want to put it, and it told you the right way to live. You get this idea even in the later Old Testament, where it's said that the truth of the heart can be known, that it is no great dilemma to know good from evil. You simply inquire of your heart, is it good or evil? And you will discover a voice which will tell you. And all the great thinkers of this Greco-Hellenistic period sought and cultivated the Logos. Plato had his demon. Everyone sought the informing voice of the nous. That's what it's called in Neoplatonism, and then in Hermeticism. In Hermeticism, and then in Gnosticism, the Logos. Now, for modern people, well, no, for me, the only way I've ever had this experience is in the presence of psychedelic substances. And then it is just crystal clear. There is no ambiguity about it. Somehow it's possible for an informing voice to come into cognition that knows more than you do. It is a connection with the collective unconscious, I suppose, that is convivial, conversational, and just talks to you about the nature of being in the world and the nature of your being in the world. It's puzzling to us because it seems so remote. I mean, for us, a voice in the head or the heart is pathology. And you may know the famous story of, in the 1st century, some fishermen were off the shore of the island of Argos in the Mediterranean Sea, and they heard a great voice from the sky. And the voice said, "Great Pan is dead. Great Pan is dead." Well, people like Lactantius and Eusebius, these patristic fathers, the people who built Christianity, who took the Gospels and turned it into a world religion, they took this annunciation from the sky of the death of Pan as the annunciation of the change of the aeon. In other words, by the aeon, I mean these 2,000-year, roughly 2,000-year periods that are associated with the equinoctial precession. Do you all understand how this works? That over 26,000 years, the heliacal rising of the solstitial sun slips slowly from one house to another. And around AD 100, I mean, there's argument because these things are never precise, but around AD 100, the age of Pisces began, and the previous aeon ceased. And the cosmic machinery, the great gears of the largest scale of the cosmic machinery clicked past a certain point and into the age of Pisces. And this was then taken as very fortuitous for Christianity because Christ was associated with the sign of the fish and was seen as a Piscean movement. But I believe that it's entirely possible that the Logos at that moment, that rough moment in time, fell silent, and that it has been silent for 2,000 years. And what we have had then is the exegesis of text and, noetic archaeology of the sort we're carrying on here. But that now, in a phenomenon as trivial and high-ponted as channeling can be seen as the reawakening of the Logos. The long night of Piscean silence is ending, and the spirit of nous is again moving in the world, speaking in the minds of the adepts and the hierophants who have the techniques and the will to connect with this stuff. I don't know how I got off on that, but obviously this kind of literature can be seen as the last message from the fading Logos, the last statements before the change of the aeon rendered this control language very difficult and non-intuitive and somewhat incomprehensible.
I guess what I could say about this,
from a psychedelic perspective, the thing that is different for psychedelic people looking at the global dilemma that we're in and that increases, that continues to deepen around us, is that it's, from my point of view, permission to hope rather than despair, because I think that processes, institutions that for 1,000 years or more have been building toward some kind of symmetry break, some kind of definitive, self-revealing moment, that we now are turning final, as pilots say. We're now deeply embedded in the pattern. We can see enough of what's ahead of us to begin to actually feel the texture of the end of human history. It's no longer an abstraction. Even the straight people who own the world with their long-term and short-term projections, looking at population growth, spread of greenhouse gases, disappearance of the ozone hole, rising third world expectations, so forth and so on. When you propagate all these trends, it seems very clear that business as usual is no longer an option. Nobody's talking about that. So we're either in some kind of final, fatal meltdown of the values of Western civilization, revealed now after 1,000 or 2,000 year run to essentially be bankrupt, or we're going to transform ourselves unrecognizably. There really isn't any middle ground. The most radical and least likely future of all, it seems to me, is a future in which we continue just to stumble forward as we have been since the Industrial Revolution. That's no longer an option. And so then the question becomes sort of a Gnostic conundrum. Is this the final act of some kind of great cosmic tragedy in which intelligence rises out of the slime, is shown to be inadequate and sinks back into the slime? Or is this, a tale of difficulty overcome and heroism won? And are we going to be able to shed the monkey nature and shed the ego and actually move up to some kind of shining ideal? If you think of us as the descendants of the angels, this is a pretty tatty circumstance we've come to rest in. On the other hand, if you think of us as the descendants of shit-hurling apes screeching through the treetops, then it's pretty amazing what has been accomplished here. One of the dilemmas that I feel very strongly, and I'm just sort of talking off the top of my head here, because whenever a crowd is small enough, I sort of feel like I'm in my own living room. We don't have to have pretense of knowing lecturer and eager to be educated audience. The real challenge, I think, is trying to decide what is baggage and what is ballast that's going to have to be dumped. Can the future be a celebration of humanness as we have known it, meaning in the animal body with all its, joys and pains, with all its frailty and potential for ecstasy? Or is what we call human nature somehow transcendental? And did we only rest for a moment in the monkey body, as once the cutting edge of evolution must have rested in the great reptiles, and at some earlier phase in history rested in the fish, and so on? Is consciousness something uniquely human? And must we keep the animal body with us? Is our destiny to become the gardener caretakers of a revivified earth? Or is the earth like a placenta of some sort that we have literally sucked all the nutrition and potential out of because we're on our way to some grander, higher domain of being? I don't have the answer to these kinds of questions. I feel it very poignantly. It's very poignantly focused in the psychedelic, in the experience of psychedelic plants and psychedelic shamanism, because, as any of you have followed my ideas on this know, I've spent a lot of time in the Amazon basin with human populations that seem to have struck some kind of dynamic balance with the earth. And yet the paradox of that dynamic balance is that when you take the sacraments, the hallucinogenic plants of these people, you're propelled into worlds of science fiction like strangeness, transcendental dimensions of titanic implication. And then, at least I personally have come to the realization that this is how those cultures have chosen to deal with the Faustian impulse in human beings. It's been somehow confined in the domain of the imagination. We, meaning we who trace our ancestry back to Europe, are part of a different style, a different strain of human being, if you will. We are the idea excretors, not satisfied to have a canoe, a net, 5 fish hooks, and a bowl, but instead we take matter, we, Western civilization, Western technology, and we impress upon matter ideas, millions of ideas, cities like Manhattan, high-performance weaponry, enormous works of art. All of this is a kind of impulse, very strong in Western human beings, to bring the ideas out of the domain of mind and to somehow solidify them in matter, permanence. The cult of the West is permanence. I always feel that when you can find the obsessive center of a society, you probably put your finger on its central neurosis as well. I remember when I spent time in India. India is ripe with talk of Shakti. Shakti is energy conceived of in various ways. It can be sexual energy, or it can actually be electricity flowing through wires. It's called Shakti. And I realized, being in India, that the Indian obsession with Shakti was the consequence of there not being any. That this was a society where energy had become the hardest commodity to encounter. And I think in the West, permanence is our great bugaboo, because we are born into the realization that everything is slipping through our fingers at the very moment that it comes into existence. The hardest psychedelic truth to assimilate, and you don't have to take psychedelics to assimilate this. If you just live, this will be hammered in on you again and again. And it's not, it's a cause for exaltation. It's a cause for despair. It's that nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. Not your fortune, not your misfortune, not your lovers, your enemies, your children, ultimately not even your own life and body. Everything fades. And so the Western response to this is the attempt to create something permanent, civilizations, enduring ideas, enduring institutions. All this is doomed to failure. And I see this Western obsession with the
cult of permanence as a consequence of the Western obsession with ego. Ego, to my mind, is the very thing, if you had to somehow meld each problem into the next problem to try and reduce all problems to one, what you would eventually come to is the realization that ego is what is destroying us. Our inability to displace our loyalty away from the unique locus of space and time represented by our own bodies. Community, communalism. These are the things that we fear, that we repress, and that we at the same time struggle to realize. I mean, the collapse of communism on one level was the collapse of a repressive, nightmarish, paranoid social system. But the dream which lay behind that was a dream of community, of unity, of sisterhood and brotherhood. And the great concern now is that with the collapse of even a pretense of that position, that we are further fragmented, further
Hey there.
Sounds like you're heading out. What were you working on today?
I know.
Love that energy. What are we enjoying? Some well-earned rest, music, food, or something else?
Video games.
All right, I'm in. Want to play a word game, trivia, a riddle challenge, or something else?
You think you're smarter than me?
Depends on the topic. I've read a ton of stuff, but you've got real-life smarts I don't. Want to test each other with a few questions?
Yeah.
Awesome. You want to go first, or should I hit you with a question?
Who's the biggest paid StarCraft player of all time?
Nice one. That would be Lee Life Sung Hyun. But actually, after his ban, the top spot went to Juna Seral Sotala, the Finnish Zerg player. He's earned over $1 million in prize money and is considered one of the greatest non-Korean players ever. All right, your turn. What's the only mammal capable of true flight?
Bat. A bat. A bat.
You got it. So, you going to answer the mammal question or want another challenge?
At the moment, who has the best Protoss first serve in StarCraft 2?
Protoss versus Jerikins doesn't quite ring a bell. I think something got mixed up. Did you mean Protoss versus Terran, or a specific player matchup like Protoss versus Zerg, or maybe a player named Jerkins? Want to clarify?
Protoss versus Zerg.
That sounds like the end of an epic tale. Did you just finish telling one or watching something cool? What's the story about?
There's still.
You too. Sleep well when you get there. Before you go, was there a story you were thinking?